Hello and good day. This is Punchline, and we are First News Nation. Punchline, we discuss national politics. As usual, thank you very much for joining us. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, but not always a pleasure to bring you the kind of political stories that most times get everyone depressed. However, irrespective of however it looks in the political scene in Nigeria, we do know that President Tinubu's time will continually be the most eventful political season we have missed active politics. The last time we saw something like that was President Goodluck Jonathan. So in the past 8 years under the APC led by President Muhammadu Buhari, it's been virtually a dead zone. But right now we're having some conversations that we have the government speaking back to the people and the people voicing their discontent to the government. One of those things will be the cyber security levy that was touted, and then President Tinubu shut it down after there was so much hue and cry. And it seems to be like Nigerians are going to be seeing a response if they push hard enough to voice their displeasure. Let's not go into the entire conversation already. I am Sammy Ajufo. Thank you very much for joining us. This is First News Nation TV, and let's remind you to join us on all our social media handles: Facebook, X, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, LinkedIn at First News Nation. Enable notifications if you know how to. So every time we have a new episode of the program, you're the first to know. We're going to talk about the labor unions and the consistency in the call for over 600,000 naira national minimum wage. We'll be right back after this short break. Both representing the TUC and the NLC respectively, and they are discussing with the federal government and organized private sector about a new national minimum wage. They had proposed about 615,000 naira national minimum wage. That means the lowest worker in Nigeria, whether it's in the private sector or the public sector, should be earning and taking home 615,000 naira per month. And that's what the labor unions are proposing. And why are they proposing this? They're saying, considering the new policies of government, considering the fact that the economy has become harsher for the average Nigerian, that discussion should be on the table. Now, there's been somewhat back and forth between the federal government and the labor unions as to what will be the national minimum wage. Currently, the national minimum wage is pegged at 30,000 naira. 30,000 naira. And according to what we hear from budget as at October 2023, about 15 states in Nigeria are unable to pay 30,000 naira as national minimum wage. Let's not talk about the private sector. They have their own issues. I'm also an employer. I know how difficult it is considering the economy. But for the government workers, both state and federal government, there are states that are unable to pay 30,000 naira national minimum wage. 15 states as released by budget. And for that reason, it brings to question now, whatever the federal government sits down with labor and finally agrees to, will the federal government or the state governments be able to pay? Remember, the federal government promised to give 35,000 naira for 6 months to federal workers to cushion the effect of the removal of fuel subsidy. And that happened only for 1 month. After that month, they have not paid the arrears for the 6 months. And of course, labor has gone on strike several times and approached government, but no one has heard about it. So the money has gone into voicemail. But on the other hand, the federal government recently gave out grants of 50,000 naira to several Nigerians. And that means that the money they probably would have given the workers have gone into the hands of several Nigerians, workers and non-workers alike. However, the labor unions, with their proposition of 615,000 naira, were not planning to shift grounds. They were hoping, and they're still holding on to 615,000 naira. Until recently, we heard the deputy president of the Nigerian Labour Congress saying that it has been moved from 615 downwards to 497. If I believe, I'll get back to you on that. And they're moving ground, but the federal government says they'll only pay 48,000 naira as national minimum wage, up from 30,000 naira. After negotiations progressed, they moved it from 48 to 54. The labor unions said they were joking. As a matter of fact, both Festus Osifo of the TUC and Joe Ajero of the NLC walked out of that meeting in protest, saying that the federal government and the organized private sector were joking with the negotiations and they were unwilling to pay. And then when they returned to the negotiating table, what happened? It was moved from 54,000 naira, that's from the federal government side, to 57,000 naira. They have not shifted ground so far. So 497,000 is where labor unions say they are going to stop. The federal government has said they can pay about 57,000 naira per month as national minimum wage. So there's a back and forth, and the conversation will continue. Now, we're asking the question, what is the ability of government to sustain payment of workers' salary to the tune of 497,000 naira? Is it impossible? No, it is not impossible. Have we had a total weeding off or weeding out of all ghost workers that are in Nigeria? If you probably put together the number of ghost workers in Nigeria, you'll probably have the entire workforce of a state or two when we talk about the federal and the state levels. But even if you weed out all the ghost workers and you want to pay, you will not still probably be able to pay 497,000 naira per month to an average Nigerian worker. I'm speaking from the federal and the state levels. As for the state, it is not assured that they can pay up to that. Many states cannot pay about 30,000 naira minimum wage. They can probably pay whenever it comes close to election time, where the government will say, we're adding 10,000 naira like a Ebonyi State government had done. We had River State some time ago adding to that, Bayelsa State, because it was very close to election season. And then the money that they couldn't pay, automatically, now they can pay. Now, if you can't pay 30,000 naira, what's the assurance you can pay 70? What's the assurance you can even pay the 57 the federal government is stopping at? NLC president has disagreed with this 57,000 naira, saying it is unsubstantial. It is not enough to have a family sustain itself in this present economic situation. The unions have also directed that at the state level, if your state government is unable or refuse to pay the 30,000 naira minimum wage, get ready for a strike action. There are several states that have been unable to pay the minimum wage, and they say there's going to be strike. How long will that strike be? How recent has it been that labor took a strike serious and the federal government called them to negotiating table and answered them and paid them what they asked for? No, it's not happened in a long time. Remember what happened with ASU? ASU went on strike for a very long time, about 6 months or so. They went on strike, demanding that their wages and entitlements and everything that promised should be paid. What did the federal government do? Government of President Buhari went and formed a parallel body to divide ASU. And we didn't hear about the ASU agitation again. Students return to schools, and probably when next election is going to show up, ASU once again go on strike. Because somehow ASU feels that around the election period, there's always money, and they will not be wrong. But have you heard from ASU in a very long time? No, you have not heard from them, because there's now a parallel body, and we don't know whether the federal government has even given them 1% of what they were asking for. So will this also happen to the NLC? Will we see the same thing happen to the NLC? Remember, there's NLC and TUC. But in this matter, they are united, which seems to be a big problem for the government of President Tinubu. Before we go for a short break, let me add this. Some time ago, when the NLC was threatening to go on strike, President Tinubu said, if you want to actually contest for presidency in 2027, wait till 2027. Now, the question was, were they protesting to kick the president out of power, or was it a part also, or were they just demanding for workers' rights? It shows you the attitude. Even a former president of the NLC, who's currently a senator, I'm talking about Senator Adams Oshomole, former governor of Edo State, also came out to speak, especially when we had Joe Ajero have the assault on Joe Ajero in Imo State, and then we didn't see a comrade coming out to support. We saw him go in the media and say different things about his former constituency. Bear in mind, that Adams Oshiomhole won his first term as governor under the Labour Party. Many people don't know. Even the governor of Ondo State, Olusegun Mimiko, was under the Labour Party as well, until what Labour became right now. So let's go for a short break. When we come back, we'll talk about the review of the minimum wage and the possibilities that the Tinubu administration will accent to any of their demands. Right now, it's at 57. The Labour is at 497. Where is going to be the common ground? You drop that in the comment section below. Let's know where you think the federal government and the labor union should stop in the realities of government. We'll be right back. Welcome back. It's still Punchline. I am Sammy Ajufo. It's a privilege to have you join us. We're talking about the national minimum wage, that the discussion between the federal government and the organized private sector on one side of the table, and the labor unions led by the NLC, Joe Ajero, and the TUC, Festus Osifo, discussing what the next minimum wage should look like. Now, the conversation about the new minimum wage has always been in the offing. But ever since President Tinubu on the 29th of May at Eagle Square declared that fuel subsidy is gone, which was not part of his inaugural speech, but when he made that statement, the entire economy of Nigeria changed at that minute. We had an increase, a sharp increase in prices of things. Inflation came up just because of a statement, and many of us have called that the most careless statement in recent democratic history. That's the truth. Now, when that happened, we saw increases all over since Tinubu came into power. And because of that, the Labour has said, if you have removed fuel subsidy, which many of us don't really believe has really been removed, and other people believe fuel subsidy is an entire scam. But if you have removed fuel subsidy and you've seen the attendant increase in price of goods and services, is it not right that you should increase the salary of workers so they can meet up with the demands of the new economy? And that's what they're clamoring for. And I believe the labor unions have sat down to say, what is an average Nigerian family supposed to take care of themselves for a month? And when that price was increased in terms of removing fuel subsidy, landlords increased their rent, price of goods in the market increased, price of transportation increased, air flight increased, a lot of things increased. Let's not even go into the currency. Let's not talk about what's happening at the foreign exchange, where Nigeria's naira took a huge beating. Now, the question is, can the federal government meet the labor in the reality of what Nigeria economy looks like today? My wife told me how much a bucket of pepper that used to be 3,000 naira, and just yesterday she called the lady in the market and they said it's 8,000 naira. How will Nigerians survive? Is it the palliatives that they send in that looks like what happened during the COVID that people are going to sustain themselves with? No, that's not that's not plausible. It's not dropping bags of rice and saying by the state government. As a matter of fact, House of Representatives and Senators did better in distributing the rice than what many state governments have done. And I always say this, most of those rice bags you see that President Tinubu has said, give it to the people to ameliorate their suffering. Guess where they are? They are somewhere stockpiled, waiting for 2027. And if you remember the images or the videos of people raiding warehouses where COVID-19 palliative materials were, that's probably what's going to happen again if care is not taken. Now, is the federal government and labor union discussion about the minimum wage, are the labor union leaders trying to use this high price of 615, now 497, are they trying to use it to get the federal government to rescind on its policies on the removal of this so-called fuel subsidy? Or are they trying to make sure the federal government matches up to meet up the demands of the Nigerian workers? Since you remove fuel subsidy, okay, we'll increase, we must increase minimum wage. Okay, you don't want to increase minimum wage? Reduce fuel subsidy or remove it. And maybe that is the conversation. They're accusing the federal government of creating harsh policies. And if you say harsh policies, you'll be right. There are a lot of policies the federal government under Bola Ahmed Tinubu has instituted that have caused more harm than good to the average Nigerian. Now that you say there's no more fuel subsidy, but the fuel price keeps increasing. As a matter of fact, as soon as President Tinubu declared that fuel subsidy has been removed, NNPC came out with a new price regime. We had moved from 254 under President Buhari to around 600, and now it's around 700. Sometimes it fluctuates between 700 and 800. Just depends on the mood of the petroleum price marketers or the mood of the tanker operators, or when the petrol stations, if one of their mothers died, they say, we are going for the burial, we're not going to come back for 1 week. That means price of fuel will go up. Every practitioner in the oil sector needs to be probed. But that's a conversation for another day. Recently, Alhaji Aliko Dangote, president of the Dangote refinery, had declared that with the understanding of what's going on within his refinery system, they are very confident that we will stop importing fuel from June. This was the June that the President Buhari administration, no, it was last June, President Buhari's administration said they were going to remove subsidy. Every June, there seems to one promise or the other. It's unfortunate because June is my birth month. I don't know why they use it for all those stuff. So Aliko Dangote is saying by June, Nigeria should stop importing refined products, which means that his petroleum refinery will probably be able to carry it. We hear there are new refineries in the offing. Edo State has a refinery. Other states are also trying to build their own modular refineries. So everyone just needs to get into the sector, which will be good. Now, if Aliko Dangote is saying that we'll not need to import, it means that we're still paying fuel subsidy. So what was President Tinubu's fuel subsidies gone stuff? What did it mean at that point in time? Have we stopped paying fuel subsidy? That question I'm asking directly to the camera. So what this means, if Aliko Dangote is saying we're going to stop importing fuel come June, will it reduce the hardship? Will the labor unions back down? Will the pump price return to 600 naira or even lower? I don't think so, because in Nigeria, whatever goes up, stays up, lives up, and goes higher. That's it. The central bank recently announced a raise in the interest rate from the basis point it was to something higher. I'm talking about the interest rate raised from 24.75% to around 26.25%. That's the latest thing, and every practitioner, every manufacturer, every businessman is crying. It's for deposit money banks and non-deposit money banks. This is another hurtful thing to the Nigerian economy and to the Nigerian people. This is the 11th time the federal government has tried to fight inflation by increasing the monetary policy rates, which is the interest rates. And they say they want to fight inflation. 11th time, let me tell you, it's not 11th time from Goodluck Jonathan. It's not 11 times from Yar'Adua, neither is it 11 times from Basanjo. It's 11 times since 2022. Since President Buhari's administration, with Godwin Emefiele as the CBN governor, now to Yemi Cardoso as CBN governor, 11 times. And it seems they are gunning for a 20th time. Will it get to 30%? Will it get to 40% interest rate for people who want to take loans from the bank? That's a big question we need to ask. Tinubu's administration has also increased electricity tariff. It was the first time people heard band A, band B, band C, band D. And for the first time in our lives, as a people, nobody wants to score A. Nobody. Because A is expensive. From 68 naira per kilowatt hour, it became 220 naira per kilowatt hour. After there was so much shouts and cries and protests, it went down to 206 naira per kilowatt hour. But now we ask the question, is this money workable? Whatever the labor unions and the federal government come to the table to finally agree on, will the federal government keep their side of the bargain? Will the federal civil service or the state civil service become more proactive and performance-based? Will the state governments be able to pay salaries? Will we have a checks and balance system where we can stop people from flocking into the civil service once they know that you're earning 200,000 naira a month, not to talk about 615,000 naira a month. Will you increase what you give to NYSC, the core members? Will you increase it? Will you also increase in other areas? Will the federal government get money and pump it into the private sector as palliatives to help grow the economy? Will the SMEs also have something to earn so that they could pay at least a bare minimum wage to their workers? We're going to watch and see how that pans out. I'm Sammy Ajufo, and I'll still be here to tell you how things have gone ahead. And then we'll watch and see where this will end. For now, it is what we call a dogfight between the federal government and the labor unions, and we're going to see who blinks first. If you have questions or you have comments or you disagree or agree what we have to say, drop it in the comment section below. We'll be pleased to hear what you have to say about this latest development. Thank you for joining us. I am Sammy Ajufo on behalf of the entire production team. Thank you very much for joining. Once again, follow us on all our social media handles: Facebook, X, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, LinkedIn at First News Nation TV. Enable notifications if you can find it. And as well as you go out there to make your money and do your business, please do your best to stay safe.